Hey, hello and welcome. This is Summer Piha from the Conscious.Classroom certification model. Check us out at cccmodel.com. You're listening to Let's Talk ECE, the place on the internet where we talk tips, tricks, and perspective shifts related to all things early childhood. Join Summer and Rachel in their mindset shifting discussions on common topics in the early childhood world. You'll hear real stories from their time working together as an owner-director pair and how they learn to see things from each other's perspectives over the years, so you can learn how to openly discuss these viewpoints and find common ground within your leadership team. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk ECE. Today's episode is really special. So in our company, we do something called What Works, What Doesn't. And we do it after every event. We do it after every webinar. In fact, sometimes we do it after recording our podcasts. And so we recorded our last What Works, What Didn't session. So you as listeners can get a little sneak peek behind the scenes.
Okay. So I think typically when we do What Works, What Didn't, we're recording on paper.
Yes.
So we're going to try something different and do it recorded for our CCC clients so they can understand and see what a what works, what didn't look like. And I want everyone to understand and to know that what works, what didn't does not take away from the success of the overall event.
Correct.
Okay, so Rachel and I just did a webinar. So thrilled. From the beginning to the very end of the webinar, we're going to talk about our successes and things that we need to do better. Okay, so thinking of the webinar, the Canva webinar. There's a B. Thinking of the Canva webinar from the absolute very beginning. 2 weeks ago, we had this idea to host a monthly webinar with information, valuable information for our clients. One of our founding principles and core values is to make sure that we're not having people do busy work. And so we always want to make sure that we're showing up with informative content. September's really busy.
So busy.
So to make sure that we're not adding more onto people's plates, it was sort of a lighter webinar. I wanted to do a webinar where people could gain information, gain content, but not necessarily have to use their whole brain and like explode. Mm-hmm. So we did a webinar on Canva. Rachel is our technology guru. She is really good with all things technology, and I asked her to host the webinar. So putting together everything we've learned in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's not a quick,
That's a lot of content.
Right. It's not a quick, fast, easy process. So putting together everything we've learned in the last 3 years. I was very pleased with the amount of signups we had for the webinar. We had 71 people sign up.
So we sold out twice and upped the number and then capped it.
Yep. We had, originally we said we were going to cap it at 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a Facebook message saying, hey, it's sold out, but I want to attend. So we moved it to 60. Once again, it was sold out. We were still getting messages from people wanting to attend, so we upped it to 75.
Yep.
I honestly think our Zoom capacity is 100.
Yeah.
So filing that under what worked, what didn't, this time it worked. Potentially in the future, using Zoom as the platform for a webinar might not.
Yeah.
Just depending on the content and the amount of people that we have sign up.
Yep.
Okay. The idea of using social media, using videos, using email marketing to get clients in. To me, I felt like that worked. You were the one who wrote most of the content.
Yep.
Can you talk me through or explain a little bit about, did it work? Did it not?
I mean, I think just based on the number of clients we got from it, it definitely worked. The number of people that came from it, we had a ton of new interest from it, which was different and really exciting. I think one of the things that we could potentially do differently, it's just talking about more maybe in the videos that we do, like what the content's going to be, what it could be. I think we could have potentially done some more examples.
Absolutely.
To get more people engaged and ready. But I think otherwise the content, I'm really, really pleased with the number of people we had sign up.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So then using Eventbrite
Yep.
as a platform, how did you feel that worked?
I felt like that worked really well. It's super easy. It was a free event, so we didn't have any charges to go through them. Yeah. I think for a paid event, we might want to reevaluate because of percentages for cost. But as far as free events, it works really, really well.
Great. Okay.
Eventually, they are changing the number of free participants you can have. So I think you'll only be able to have 50. So if that's the case, we might need to use a different platform.
Okay.
But
that's super good to know. That's super good to know and mark down for future events.
Yep.
Okay, as for the actual content of the webinar, I thought it was amazing. The idea that we were still able to provide value to clients, to potential clients, to childcare owners and directors, to actually, we had some participants who weren't even in the childcare field.
That was super
who showed
cool.
up. I felt like it was a good topic.
Yes.
And I know you did most of the presenting, and so I just want to check in with you about how you felt about it.
So I think we used Zoom. Zoom is probably the easiest platform to present on. I liked that we were able to use it in a private space so people could still share their cameras. If we have a bigger webinar on Zoom, they can't, but I like to see people, so that's nice. So I thought that worked really well. I think as far as content went, there were a couple spaces for me personally that I felt it was disjointed.
Okay.
And I think I realized as I was going through, it's because at the beginning I did a really good job at connecting things to our brand kit and our brand in general.
Yeah.
At the end, I did a really good job connecting things to our brand in general. In the middle, I was much more in a teaching mode and not necessarily saying and this is how you connect it back to your brand.
Got it.
Which is something I want to instill in people because that brand continuity is so important.
Excellent.
So.
Got it. From a actual webinar perspective, I really loved how people utilized the chat.
Yes.
I thought that was really fun because for me, one of the biggest pieces is making sure that people find value in what we're doing.
Yep.
We're not just talking to hear our own voices, right? I don't know. We'll go out for happy hour. We'll go out for happy hour if that's going to happen. But when we're presenting, I want to make sure that people's questions are getting answered. And I think utilizing that chat back and forth, whether it is engaging with emojis, engaging with asking questions, engaging with repeating content that we see or that we say, that's really important to me.
Yep.
And I feel like that was happening throughout the entire presentation.
Which was happening, and I think you have to give yourself a lot of credit for it because that's taken a ton of learned skill
Training.
and practice.
Training. It doesn't come naturally.
That's not natural.
Correct.
It feels weird to do initially, but it's really good. Summer and I also kind of traded spaces. Generally, I am kind of behind the scenes, so I'm watching the chat, I'm watching some of those things. So I think there were some things that could have we next time need to communicate ahead of time.
Well, and I think it was
Just
interesting to trade spaces.
Yeah, it was.
I'm usually the main presenter and Rachel's usually the MC, the technology person. I had a mini panic attack behind the scenes. She didn't even know what happened. About if this technology breaks, I'm gonna have to jump in and be like, Rachel, I need your help. I can't. I don't know what to do here. A few times, Rachel, out of what's that called when your body just
automatic response.
Automatic.
Yeah,
so her
muscle memory.
She automatically accepted people into the room because we have a private closed room, and that was my position, my role this time. And she's so used to monitoring the chat and letting people in and monitoring the technology that as a presenter, it
got distracting almost from time to time.
I was gonna say, I didn't notice it from like a viewer's perspective, but I can imagine from the presenter's perspective, it took away from the content you were presenting.
And I think especially had I not been as comfortable with the content I was presenting, it would have been much more challenging to switch back into what I was doing. So I think having that conversation ahead of time of like, okay, who is going to let people in after the start time? Who is going to, like, should I look at the chat at all or no? Are we only going to do that?
Excellent.
That
really
back
good.
and forth would be
really good food for thought. When we talk about in terms of like what worked, what didn't, food for thought for next presentation.
Yep.
If we were to switch roles, and when we're not switching roles, what is the role of letting people in, chat, the sound effects that Zoom makes, what are some of the Zoom settings? So that was another thing.
That was another thing we
thinking
talked
about what works, what didn't. The Zoom settings.
It was set so nobody had to have their camera on coming in, which I don't like. I like seeing people's faces.
Right. I prefer to see people's faces too as a presenter. I want to see if people are relating to the content, if people are liking it, even if people are busy. Like I remember doing a 4-hour webinar, and there was this woman who was like, she had her camera on the whole time. She was like folding laundry and helping children. She did not sit down once in 4 hours.
Yeah.
But she had her camera on so I could see that she was still listening, and I could see what resonated, and I could see what wasn't relevant.
Yeah.
And as a presenter, that's super helpful. So I think if we can have the Zoom settings set differently. Also muting. People are working. People are busy. So they're having side conversations. It's not like when you're one-on-one with a person. So making sure the Zoom settings are camera on, mute, and the dinging. And you say as a presenter, the dinging doesn't necessarily bother you?
So it was more as, not even as the presenter, I think I was thinking from the mindset of the position you were in today, that dinging helps me, like because when you're not presenting, you have multiple screens up at the same time.
Like 36.
Like a bunch of screens.
I can show you a screenshot. I took a screenshot. It's ridiculous.
But when that happens, the ding helps me be like, okay, I need to let this person in, and it doesn't bother me as a presenter because my typical role is to let people in.
Got it.
But
for me, it's like, okay, if we're starting the pitch and then a whole bunch of people leave, it like makes you feel like, oh God, I'm schmarmy. I don't want to be schmarmy. And this is part of what I have to do. This is my role. I have to tell what we do so people can, there's a saying, the offers you don't make, people can't take, right? And so part of why we offer free content is so people can say like, hey, you're doing a really good job. I really find value in what you do. Let me hire you to help assist my services. Yeah. And so when people leave and the ding happens, it kind of is disheartening a little bit from that perspective.
Yep.
So I understand it from the like entrance perspective of like, oh God, I have to pay attention. Like I have to let people in. I have to, and then also from the presenter perspective, did it distract you at all as people were dinging throughout? It was an hour-long presentation.
So I would say for the first half it didn't, because it was in and out. But then I would say halfway through, a couple people would go.
And then click back in.
But I wouldn't know that they were going to click back in, so I was like, I'm boring.
Right. So I'm curious. Yes,
I think having that ding off initially.
I would like to try it just to see, and we can always have that conversation, a further conversation about, hey, okay, so this ding noise, as the facilitator of the person who lets people in, we can turn it back on. Yep. But I would love to try it.
Yeah. I think that would be really beneficial.
What do you think?
I think that would be really beneficial.
Let's give it a shot. Okay, and then even thinking, okay, so we walked through like designing the presentation, getting people to show up, getting participants, the actual presentation itself.
Well, and one thing we haven't talked about yet is we talked about like what we're selling afterwards, which I'm really excited about. Somebody signed up while we were on.
Hang on, let's rewind a little bit.
Okay.
Where it's like, remember a few days ago when I asked you actually where it was like, what's the purpose of this? Is the purpose of this to get email addresses? Is the purpose of this to sell something? Like, where's the purpose? What do we got going on here?
Yeah.
And we had decided the purpose of this was to provide value for our clients.
Yep.
And so knowing that and knowing Rachel's expertise, we came up with a pop-up. It's not a boot camp, it's not a course, it's not a webinar, it's a pop-up. We want to make sure that our clients can take action and move forward. So we're providing 4 hours of very specialized training, and that's where we were going to point people. So knowing that, hey, we have all these participants and we're pointing them here in this direction, give us clarity on the end. What do you think? Where are you at with that?
No, I loved everything about that. I think that was really good to have that conversation too, to know exactly where we were, what our aim was. I think that helps with the type of content you're creating. How you are presenting the content is very different from it's very different.
If it were like everyone I know, right?
Yeah.
Like if it were everyone I know, I'd be like in my pajamas and I'd have crazy hair, like like now. But it would be more casual, as opposed to like, hi, here's a whole room full of people I don't know. I don't know what their expectations. Oh, we forgot about the Ask campaign. Rachel.
Oh, we did.
God.
That was really good.
No. I'm so proud of this, you guys. So there's a whole Ask campaign where after people initially started signing up and
once we got about 30.
I was going to say more than we expected. We were like,
which was nowhere. It wasn't even half at the point, but we're so excited because 30 people signed up.
Right. So we had sent out an Ask campaign, and the Ask campaign basically was just like, hey, where are you at? Because once again, thinking back to our core values and founding principles, we want to make sure we're providing value for our clients. And that was like, hey, we need to make sure we're not telling them how to log in when they already know how to log in. That's boring.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure we're at their level. So the Ask campaign, sending out a survey saying like, hey, where are you at? Like, do you want to like fall over dead and die? Or are you like, okay with this?
Yep.
And I think that was I can't believe we forgot that step.
I know.
That was so valuable.
It was super valuable. I think the one thing I learned about the Ask campaign is open-ended questions are really, really challenging. So I asked one question about like, what kind of materials would you want to use? Or would you want to create in Canva? And I left it open. And everyone just wrote everything, which is not particularly helpful. So I think next time I'll pick a like, select your top 3.
Got it.
That would work better for me to prepare in advance.
Love it.
So I'm using the right material.
That's the Ask campaign before the event. And then after the event, there's a follow-up sequence.
Yep.
And this is the first time we've never had the follow-up sequence. We've never actually had the program designed, and we've never had the follow-up sequence designed, because we wanted to make sure it was what people wanted, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that's not necessarily your comfort level. And where are you at with that right now?
I think when you know something well enough and you can practice in it, it's fine. It feels really good to be able to say like, I know this skill level, or I know this skill good enough that whatever clients want from it, I will be able to provide.
Well,
and there's some anxiety because I'm a preparer and I'm a perfectionist.
And I know that about you, where I know like anything that I'm like, hey, can you do this? You're like, yep, absolutely. Hey, can you do this? I mean, I've worked with you for 8 years now.
8.
And so to know that, like, I know your skill level.
Yeah.
And I would never have put you in a position where you would have failed.
Yep.
So knowing that there's that level of trust that we have to have in each other. And I also know that you love to be organized and you love to plan ahead. And so this probably brought a level of like dis-ease and uncomfort a little bit. So okay, that being said, the follow-up emails.
Yes.
Can you walk me through? We had 3 follow-up sequences, right?
Yep.
Because the follow-up sequence on the webinar, we offered a certain price, like a discounted price, massively discounted price. So you created the link for that.
Yep.
Tell me the ease of that. Like, was that
That
hard?
was super straightforward and good.
Perfect.
That was easy.
You created the link and threw it into the script.
Yep.
So I had it available for me, so I could throw it in the chat. It was nice and easy.
That was super easy.
Then the follow-up email had a different price because we were only offering a discounted price
if you signed up during the session, which was really cool.
Also, we did have a sale during the session, so that was massive. That was our first time ever selling from the event and having somebody buy during the event. So that was so massive.
That was so exciting.
And it was so fun to be able to celebrate in the chat about like, hey, so-and-so bought this and congratulations, and we're so looking forward to working with you and your team, and it was amazing, and blah.
And I think that's actually one more point of like what worked, what didn't. It was really good to celebrate. It was really good to do what we did.
It's good to celebrate.
It's always good to celebrate. It was really good to sell it at that discounted price during the event. That felt really good. What we didn't talk about beforehand was like, do we acknowledge if people buy during? Because I don't think we expected it, so we didn't talk about it.
Right.
So then I had to awkwardly be like, can I put this in the chat?
Absolutely. Like if you watch the replay and you see me being like, absolutely. That's her talking to me from the side and me trying to present and signal.
There's a lot happening.
But at the same time, like that was a super cool moment and opportunity for us.
Yeah.
The fact that we sold, like we weren't planning on making a sale, so the fact that we made a sale during the presentation was super cool.
Yep.
So then the follow-up sequence. During the event, there was a price. Then there had to be a link for after the event because the price changed.
Yep.
And then there has to be a link for the general audience, which is a completely different price.
Yep.
Because hey, we want to reward you for coming to the webinar. We want to reward you for signing up for the webinar. And
this is clearly something that interests you. Also, so we want to give you the value where you are finding it. Yeah.
So there were 3 different sale links, if you will, for the webinar. And how was that for you as the back-end person who usually takes care of that, handles that?
That was all pretty easy. So one of the links just changed.
Got it.
Because you changed it after, which you can either set to change immediately after, which I always get trepidatious about because I'm a perfectionist, so I like to go in and manually do it. And the other one is just a separate link, and that felt fine to do.
Okay.
Because they're 2 things. They're super fast with what we use for payment. Okay. The emails that we sent, it was interesting. Okay, I think that's an interesting topic to talk about because we couldn't prep the emails ahead of time because we didn't necessarily know what people were latching onto. So we didn't know what kind of content they'd want in this 4-week course that we're offering.
ChatGPT.
Yes.
What worked, what didn't? ChatGPT.
So I think ChatGPT, I put in just a summary of the course of what I wanted it to be. It popped something out that was terrible.
It wasn't terrible. It was
bland. Boring.
It was bland.
So then I retyped it and it's like, can you make this in a fun tone? And it was a little better. Changed it to match us a little bit more.
Okay.
And then was able to make some edits and send it out. The one thing I will say about that is it happened right after. Summer's a really celebratory person, and I'm a don't drop the ball person. So I think
I kept watching for you to be excited because it was your first webinar.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I was like, hey, you did it. Massive, cheers, champagne, let's celebrate.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, I have 30 things I need to do. And I was like, right, but nothing was bad. Everything was so good.
Yep.
So even just knowing how we work that way.
Yeah.
And having it.
And so I think for me, also being able to say, I need, for both of us, right? So I think on my end, I need to be able to shut down the to-dos for 30 minutes.
Yes.
To just be able to sit and oh my gosh, we did it, and be excited.
Absolutely.
And then get back into it.
But I don't think that's realistic. I think realistically after the event, it's hammer out the to-dos and then come and have a happy hour, celebrate, get the wine, get the fries, do the thing.
Yeah.
Because we always want to take care of our clients first.
We do.
And that's where your mindset,
I
I immediately, as soon as I hit end meeting, was like, oh my goodness.
Which totally makes sense, especially because you're usually the presenter and I am on that back end.
Yes.
There's always just a little bit, she has more prep ahead of time usually for writing stuff, and I have more back end. So it's interesting because I get more excited up front.
Yeah.
And then you're more excited on the other end. So we have to meet each other there.
And so I think when we talk about this what works, what didn't meeting.
Yeah.
Overall, event success.
It's really good.
Overall, event success.
Yeah.
And moving forward, there are a few things we can tweak. There are a few things we can communicate
to each other
ahead of time.
Yep.
But looking at this what works, what didn't meeting, I'm hoping that you find value in this, because this really is what we do after everything we do. We do a what works, what didn't. We, when I had my schools, I did, after every single tour, I sat down for 5 minutes and I did a what works, what didn't. What words did people reflect and connect with? What words did they not? What jokes fell flat? What jokes were hilarious? And it really helped me be able to hone in on whether it's a sales pitch or your tour or your conversion rate. That was really important. Thinking about events where it might be something where you have parents come in, doing this type of what works, what didn't really, really helps move your program forward.
Yeah.
And like I said, it doesn't take away from the celebration of a fantastic event. I mean, we're here, right?
We are. And I think one thing, if you don't mind me sharing, is
Absolutely.
I knew we were going to do the what works, what didn't ahead of time. And even though we've done this a million times, I've never done it from the position I was in today. So I was prepared for there to be much more what didn't.
And it was good.
So I was a little bit more stoic when we started, because I was waiting for the sandwich of you did this good and everything else was terrible, but your hair looked nice. And that wasn't the case. So also coming in with a realistic baseline of knowing it's not a judgment, it's not anything, it's in everybody's feeling, it's where people responded, and it's just a work forward.
Well, and if you can really document these meetings, I think about a Thanksgiving feast we used to hold, and we could document these meetings of what worked, what didn't, and then we had less food waste. We had better flow of actual people in the space. We had all of these things that made our program better. When you talk about what works, what didn't, it's not an attack on a person. It's not a review. I'm not doing a performance review. I'm literally saying hey, we had this event. What was awesome? And what can we do better next time?
Yeah.
And that's it. So hopefully you found this helpful.